The Adventures of Pinocchio by C. Collodi. Translated by Carol della Chiesa. Chapter 24. Pinocchio reaches the island of the busy bees and finds the fairy once more. Pinocchio, spurred on by the hope of finding his father and of being in time to save him, swam all night long. And what a horrible night it was! It poured rain, it hailed, it thundered, and the lightning was so bright that it turned the night into day. At dawn he saw, not far away from him, a long stretch of sand. It was an island in the middle of the sea. Pinocchio tried his best to get there, but he couldn't. The waves played with him and tossed him about as if he were a twig or a bit of straw. At last, and luckily for him, a tremendous wave tossed him to the very spot where he wanted to be. The blow from the wave was so strong that as he fell to the ground, his joints cracked and almost broke. But, nothing daunted, he jumped to his feet and cried, "Once more I have escaped with my life!" Little by little the sky cleared. The sun came out in full splendor, and the sea became as calm as a lake. Then the marionette took off his clothes and laid them on the sand to dry. He looked over the waters to see whether he might catch sight of a boat with a little man in it. He searched and he searched, but he saw nothing except sea and sky, and far away a few sails, so small that they might have been birds. "If only I knew the name of this island," he said to himself. "If I even knew what kind of people I would find here. But whom shall I ask? There is no one here." The idea of finding himself in so lonesome a spot made him so sad that he was about to cry, but just then he saw a big fish swimming nearby, with his head far out of the water. Not knowing what to call him, the marionette said to him, "Hey there, Mr. Fish, may I have a word with you?" "Even two, if you want," answered the fish, who happened to be a very polite dolphin. "Will you please tell me if, on this island, there are places where one may eat without necessarily being eaten?" "Surely there are," answered the dolphin. "In fact, you will find one not far from this spot." "And how shall I get there?" "Take that path on your left and follow your nose. You can't go wrong." "Tell me another thing. You who travel day and night through the sea, did you not perhaps meet a little boat with my father in it?" "And who is your father?" "He is the best father in the world, even as I am the worst son that can be found." "In the storm of last night," answered the dolphin, "the little boat must have been swamped." "And my father?" "By this time he must have been swallowed by the terrible shark, which for the last few days has been bringing terror to these waters." "Is this shark very big?" asked Pinocchio, who was beginning to tremble with fright. "Is he big?" replied the dolphin. "Just to give you an idea of his size, let me tell you that he is larger than a 5-story building, and that he has a mouth so big, so deep, that a whole train and engine could easily get into it." "Mother mine!" cried the marionette, scared to death, and dressed himself as fast as he could. He turned to the dolphin and said, "Farewell, Mr. Fish. Pardon the bother, and many thanks for your kindnesses." This said, he took the path at so swift a gait that he seemed to fly, and at every small sound he heard, he turned in fear to see whether the terrible shark, 5 stories high and with a train in his mouth, was following him. After walking a half-hour, he came to a small country called the land of the busy bees. The streets were filled with people running to and fro about their tasks. Everyone worked. Everyone had something to do. Even if one were to search with a lantern, not one idle man or one tramp could have been found. "I understand," said Pinocchio at once wearily. "This is no place for me. I was not born for work." But in the meantime, he began to feel hungry, for it was 24 hours since he had eaten. What was to be done? There were only 2 means left to him in order to get a bite to eat. He had either to work or to beg. He was ashamed to beg, because his father had always preached to him that begging should be done only by the sick or the old. He had said that the real poor in this world, deserving of our pity and help, were only those who, either through age or sickness, had lost the means of earning their bread with their own hands. All others should work, and if they didn't, and went hungry, so much the worse for them. Just then a man passed by, worn out and wet with perspiration, pulling with difficulty 2 heavy carts filled with coal. Pinocchio looked at him, and judging him by his looks to be a kind man, said to him, with eyes downcast in shame, "Will you be so good as to give me a penny, for I am faint with hunger?" "Not only 1 penny," answered the coal man. "I'll give you 4 if you will help me pull these 2 wagons." "I am surprised," answered the marionette, very much offended. I wish you to know that I have never been a donkey, nor have I ever pulled a wagon." "So much the better for you," answered the coalman. "Then, my boy, if you are really faint with hunger, eat 2 slices of your pride, and I hope they don't give you indigestion." A few minutes after, a bricklayer passed by, carrying a pail full of plaster on his shoulder. "Good man, will you be kind enough to give a penny to a poor boy who is yawning from hunger?" "Gladly," answered the bricklayer. "Come with me and carry some plaster, and instead of 1 penny, I'll give you 5. "But the plaster is heavy," answered Pinocchio, "and the work is too hard for me." "Well, if the work is too hard for you, my boy, enjoy your yawns, and may they bring you luck." In less than half an hour, at least 20 people passed by, and Pinocchio begged of each one. But they all answered, "Aren't you ashamed? Instead of being a beggar in the streets, why don't you look for work and earn your own bread?" Finally, a little woman went by carrying 2 jugs of water. "Good woman, will you allow me to have a drink from one of your jugs?" asked Pinocchio, who was burning up with thirst. "With pleasure, my boy," she answered, setting the 2 jugs on the ground before him. When Pinocchio had had his fill, he grumbled as he wiped his mouth, "My thirst is gone. If I could only as easily get rid of my hunger." On hearing these words, the good little woman immediately said, "If you will help me carry these jugs home, I'll give you a slice of bread." Pinocchio looked at the jug and said neither yes nor no. "And with the bread, I'll give you a nice dish of cauliflower with white sauce on it." Pinocchio gave the jug another look and said neither yes nor no. "And after the cauliflower, some cake and jam." At this last bribery, Pinocchio could no longer resist and said firmly, "Very well, I will take the jug home for you." The jug was very heavy, and the marionette, not being strong enough to carry it with his hands, had to put it on his head. When they arrived home, the little woman made Pinocchio sit down at a small table and placed before him the bread, the cauliflower, and the cake. Pinocchio did not eat. He devoured. His stomach seemed a bottomless pit. His hunger finally appeased, he raised his head to thank his kind benefactress. But he had not looked at her long when he gave a cry of surprise and sat there with his eyes wide open, his fork in the air, and his mouth filled with bread and cauliflower. "Why all this surprise?" asked the good woman, laughing. "Because," answered Pinocchio, stammering and stuttering, "because you look like, you remind me of, yes, the same voice, the same eyes, the same hair, yes, you have also the same azure hair she had. Oh, my little fairy, tell me that it is you. Don't make me cry any longer. If you only knew, I have cried so much, I have suffered so." And Pinocchio threw himself on the floor and clasped the knees of the mysterious little woman. End of chapter 24. The Adventures of Pinocchio by C. Collodi, translated by Carol della Chiesa. Chapter 25. Pinocchio promises the fairy to be good and to study, as he is growing tired of being a marionette and wishes to become a real boy. If Pinocchio cried much longer, the little woman thought he would melt away, so she finally admitted that she was the little fairy with azure hair. "You are a rascal of a marionette. How did you know it was I?" she asked, laughing. "My love for you told me who you were. Do you remember? You left me when I was a little girl, and now you find me a grown woman. I am so old I could almost be your mother. I am very glad of that, for then I can call you mother instead of sister. For a long time I have wanted a mother, just like other boys. But how did you grow so quickly?" "That is a secret." "Tell it to me. I want to grow a little. Look at me. I have never grown higher than a penny's worth of cheese." "But you cannot grow," answered the fairy. "Why not?" "Because marionettes never grow. They are born marionettes, they live marionettes, and they die marionettes." "Oh, I am tired of always being a marionette," cried Pinocchio disgustedly. "It's about time for me to grow into a man as everyone else does." "And you will, if you deserve it." "Really? What can I do to deserve it?" "It's a very simple matter. Try to act like a well-behaved child." "Don't you think I do?" "Far from it. Good boys are obedient, and you, on the contrary, and I never obey. Good boys love study and work, but you, I, on the contrary, am a lazy fellow and tramp all year round. Good boys always tell the truth, and I always tell lies. Good boys go gladly to school, and I get sick if I go to school. From now on, I will be different." "Do you promise?" "I promise. I want to become a good boy and be a comfort to my father. Where is my poor father now? I do not know. Will I ever be lucky enough to find him and embrace him once more? I think so. Indeed, I am sure of it." At this answer, Pinocchio's happiness was very great. He grasped the fairy's hands and kissed them so hard that it looked as if he had lost his head. Then, lifting his face, he looked at her lovingly and asked, "Tell me, little mother, it isn't true that you are dead, is it?" "It doesn't seem so," answered the fairy, smiling. "If you only knew how I suffered and how I wept when I read, 'Here lies—'" "I know, and for that I have forgiven you. The depth of your sorrow made me see that you have a kind heart. There is always hope for boys with hearts such as yours, though they may often be very mischievous. This is the reason why I have come so far to look for you. From now on, I'll be your own little mother." "Oh, how lovely!" cried Pinocchio, jumping with joy. "You will obey me always and do as I wish?" "Gladly, very gladly, more than gladly." "Beginning tomorrow," said the fairy, "you'll go to school every day." Pinocchio's face fell a little. "Then you will choose the trade you like best." Pinocchio became more serious. "What are you mumbling to yourself?" asked the fairy. "I was just saying," whined the marionette in a whisper, "that it seems too late for me to go to school now." "No, indeed. Remember, it is never too late to learn." "But I don't want either trade or profession." "Why?" "Because work wearies me." "My dear boy," said the fairy, "people who speak as you do usually end their days either in a prison or in a hospital. A man, remember, whether rich or poor, should do something in this world. No one can find happiness without work. Woe betide the lazy fellow. Laziness is a serious illness, and one must cure it immediately. Yes, even from early childhood. If not, it will kill you in the end." These words touched Pinocchio's heart. He lifted his eyes to his fairy and said seriously, "I'll work, I'll study, I'll do all you tell me. After all, the life of a marionette has grown very tiresome to me, and I want to become a boy, no matter how hard it is. You promise that, do you not?" "Yes, I promise, and now it is up to you." End of chapter 25.
The Adventures of Pinocchio by C. Collodi. Translated by Carol della Chiesa. Chapter 26. Pinocchio goes to the seashore with his friends to see the terrible shark. In the morning, bright and early, Pinocchio started for school. Imagine what the boys said when they saw a marionette enter the classroom. They laughed until they cried. Everyone played tricks on him. One pulled his hat off, another tugged at his coat, a third tried to paint a mustache under his nose. One even attempted to tie strings to his feet and his hands to make him dance. For a while, Pinocchio was very calm and quiet. Finally, however, he lost all patience and turning to his tormentors, he said to them threateningly, "Careful, boys, I haven't come here to be made fun of. I'll respect you and I want you to respect me." "Hurrah for Dr. Know-all! You have spoken like a printed book," howled the boys, bursting with laughter. One of them, more impudent than the rest, put out his hand to pull the marionette's nose. But he was not quick enough, for Pinocchio stretched his leg under the table and kicked him hard on the shin. "Oh, what hard feet!" cried the boy, rubbing the spot where the marionette had kicked him. "And what elbows! They are even harder than the feet!" shouted another one who, because of some other trick, had received a blow in the stomach. With that kick and that blow, Pinocchio gained everybody's favor. Everyone admired him, danced attendance upon him, petted and caressed him. As the days passed into weeks, even the teacher praised him, for he saw him attentive, hard-working, and wide awake, always the first to come in the morning and the last to leave when school was over. Pinocchio's only fault was that he had too many friends. Among these were many well-known rascals who cared not a jot for study or for success. The teacher warned him each day, and even the good fairy repeated to him many times, "Take care, Pinocchio. Those bad companions will sooner or later make you lose your love for study. Some day they will lead you astray." "There's no such danger," answered the marionette, shrugging his shoulders and pointing to his forehead as if to say, "I'm too wise." So it happened that one day, as he was walking to school, He met some boys who ran up to him and said, "Have you heard the news?" "No." "A shark as big as a mountain has been seen near the shore." "Really? I wonder if it could be the same one I heard of when my father was drowned." "We are going to see it. Are you coming?" "No, not I. I must go to school." "What do you care about school? You can go there tomorrow. With a lesson more or less, we are always the same donkeys." "And what will the teacher say?" "Let him talk. He is paid to grumble all day long." "And my mother?" "Mothers don't know anything," answered those scamps. "Do you know what I'll do?" said Pinocchio. "For certain reasons of mine, I too want to see that shark, but I'll go after school. I can see him then as well as now." "Poor simpleton," cried one of the boys. "Do you think that a fish of that size will stand there waiting for you? He turns and off he goes, and no one will ever be the wiser." "How long does it take from here to the shore?" asked the marionette. "1 hour there and back." "Very well then, let's see who gets there first," cried Pinocchio. At the signal, the little troop with books under their arms dashed across the fields. Pinocchio led the way, running as if on wings, the others following as fast as they could. Now and again he looked back and, seeing his followers hot and tired, and with tongues hanging out, he laughed out heartily. Unhappy boy! If he had only known then the dreadful things that were to happen to him on account of his disobedience. End of chapter 26.